tuned to Arrow FM, your local community access radio station. The time now is 8 o'clock, time for another hour of the great music that came out in the 1960s with the 60s Nostalgia Show. The 60s Nostalgia Show is kindly sponsored by Cotter and Stevens, the electrical contractors down in Jellicoe Street in Martinborough. Cotter and Stevens are experts around the dairy shed, but they're also electrical contractors, both private and commercial. So if you like anything to be done in the electrical field, give the guys at Cotter and Stevens a ring, especially Jim and Steve. Well, I couldn't dare talk over that particular song from the Wanganui guitarist, was it Jim Coyle, wasn't it?
Jim Coyle.
Yeah, and I played that for you, Max, because you were telling me earlier on today that you guys were the backing band on that track.
Yeah, we kind of fluked that job, and it was real great experience for some very young guys in the band.
Yeah, yeah. So Max was in a band with your brother, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out a nice way to describe Tirakina, but they were based in Tirakina, but I wouldn't imagine that would have been a hot spot of rock music in the 1960s, would it?
No, that was where we went to recharge our batteries.
Oh, was it?
It was like a sort of a rest home or a spa, perhaps a spa.
For those of you who don't know, Tirakina's well, south of Wanganui, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's the classic town. If you blink, you miss it. Is that right?
Stop there. It used to have lots of pubs.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I wonder where they've gone. So the band was based in Tirakina, but obviously you would have played around in
That's
different
not a very
venues.
nice way to put it.
No, I know. I was thinking that, but I bet you did play around. But you would have played in lots of different venues around that area, wouldn't you?
We were based mainly in Wanganui.
Yeah.
And there were lots of occasions there where there were things on 2 or 3 nights in a row, and so we could have 2 or 3 jobs in a weekend if we really wanted to.
Oh,
lots
right.
happening in Wanganui in those days.
Yeah. So what we'll do is Max has picked out some songs. We'll play the first one, and then I'll dig out this record that you guys made, and you'd probably tell us a little bit of the background to it. How does that sound?
Okay.
So the first one you've picked out, a song you used to play, Wilson Pickett and the Land of 1,000 Dances.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Say it one time.
Wilson Pickett there and the Land of the 1,000 Dances. And Max, you were saying you not only played that, but that was on the first LP you bought, or the first record you bought.
It was the first LP I bought, and it was, I distinctly remember the yellow cover and the pink suit and the angle of that guy's body. I didn't believe anyone could move that way. It was fantastic.
Oh, he wasn't called Wicked Pickett for nothing. We might play a Kinks song, and the reason we're going to play it is that on this day in 1944, Mick Avery, who was the drummer for the Kinks, was born. I was actually going to play Waterloo Sunset, and I might play that later on, but Max has selected their first hit.
You got me so I can't sleep at night.
right, Max has also asked for the Trogs and the Wild Thing.
Wild thing, I think I love you, but I wanna know for sure. So come on and hold me tight. I love you. Wild thing, you make my heart sing. You make everything groovy. Wild thing. Wild thing, I think you move me, but I wanna know for sure. So come on and hold me tight. You move me. Wild thing, you make my heart sing. You make everything groovy. Wild thing.
Two in a row there brought the time to 12 minutes after 8 o'clock, and we finished off with Trogs and Wild Thing. Right, Max, we've come to the highlight of the evening. Back in the 1960s, I might have mentioned this before, but Max and his brother and some mates were in a band called, what were they, the Crescendos?
Yes.
Yeah, and as he said before, they played in different venues around Wanganui, and also managed to record a 45, and this recording came out last year in a box set, a compilation called How Is the Air Up There? 80 mod, soul, R&B and freak out nuggets from down under, and that's actually a great 3 CD set put out by RPM Records, or Rough Peel Music Records. So it was produced by Jim Core, wasn't it?
The original record, yes.
Yeah. And where'd you record it?
We recorded it in a factory in a suburb of Wanganui.
Oh,
it was
did you?
just an old house done up, and basically straight into a tape recorder. We had the drummer in another room, and we just played straight into a mixer.
So pretty basic, wasn't it?
Pretty basic.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was seat of the pants. We won the right to have the recording done in a talent quest. We won the talent quest, and the prize was a recording contract, which turned out to be a session in this factory. And we couldn't have a record produced unless we had 2 songs of our own. They had to be originals. So 3 of us sat down one night and wrote the flip side as well. But the main one, Now She's Mine, was written by Ian Irvine, the bass player, who's now sadly passed on. But he was a brilliant musician, a great guy to play with, and he wrote this song, and we put it into the record, and it's really nice to remember him with you playing it.
With that, yeah. So how well did it go?
It got to number 7 on the top 20 chart in New Zealand apparently, but I don't know anyone who bought it. Not sure how that works, Dave. Are you allowed to say that sort of thing on the radio?
Yes, yeah. You say whatever
We've
you
got to number 7.
You can say whatever you like, apart from those words I mentioned before that you just don't say. So, okay, so number 7.
Yeah.
And what year was it put out?
I think it was 1967. So, I was 18. I started in the band when I was 14, so I had to be driven everywhere, and it was not conducive to good schooling.
No, it wouldn't. No,
But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, so did you make any money out of it?
Nothing out of the record. There was some talk of possible royalties out of this re-release because it's been very successful in London, apparently. It's been released overseas. We're still waiting, and I think there are a lot of other people further up the line for royalties than us.
Then, yeah. So, as I said, it's a great set, isn't it? Some great songs, some great bands in there. So
we've been fortunate to grow up in a time when there's been some really fantastic musicians in New Zealand, and you've got lots of records by those people. And I think of Quincy Conserve. I'm desperately looking for one of their more familiar tracks because I'd love to play them.
Yeah, they were a great band. They were more 70s or definitely 70s, and I play every now and again. I sneak in what I call the grey area where it's not the 60s, but Quincy Conserve, they were a great band. I remember I got moved to Wellington in 72, and Quincy Conserve were top of everything down there. They were a great band, because it was in the days of the old booze barns, wasn't it? Yeah, where they just had not quite concrete on the floor and nothing else, but in the room and that. But they were just basically set up for selling as much grog as they could, couldn't they? But one of the pluses was that they attracted a whole lot of bands and singers, and particularly if you look at the 60s, I suppose it was slightly different, but the 70s and even probably into the 80s, the live music scene in New Zealand was really, really strong, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And there were lots of bands like Quincy Conserve where they had lots of very prominent musicians, people who've gone on and done lots of things solo.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, the singer from Quincy Conserve died quite young, didn't he? Malcolm Heyman, I think his name was.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, there were some great bands, and one of them was old Midge Marsden. I remember, in Wellington, he has had a band, and I can't call it. I think they were called the Flyers or something like that. But they used to play in a pub, the Cricketers Arms, and also the Tiger Tavern or Tiger Inn or something. And they were great. Anyway, we better stop rambling and play your song. So here we go. Here's the Crescendos direct from Turakina.
don't you come along and talk to me? I know you could. Why, here she comes right now. I knew she would. The other guy has gone away. He's gone for good. Yes, the other guy has gone away. I knew she would. Now she's mine. Now she's mine. Everything's fine. Now that she's mine.
There you go, Max. Hope that brings back some memories.
It does.
Yeah. And
Phone's ringing off the hook.
Yeah, right. And I did get told when it was playing that I should have said it wasn't from Tirakina, it was a band from Wanganui. So, no, that was great. We might actually mark a milestone, but before we do that, just had a thought, and that was one of the perks of being in a band, and I was in a band in the 60s, was the groupies. Did you have any problem with groupies?
No, my mother took care of that.
Oh, did she? Oh, okay. There was.
She made me younger than the rest of them.
Oh, okay. No, there used to be a bit of a perk.
We
There was
did.
a-
We
yeah.
did have some go-go girls.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What dancing
They were
girls?
volunteers.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they probably belong to the Rotary or Lions Club now. They were very dedicated.
Oh, I wouldn't be in Rotary.
I'd
I know that.
be wearing different dresses, I think.
Yeah. Before we get on to something a little bit more salubrious, there was a group in America, wasn't there? A group of groupies called the Plaster Casters.
Okay.
You heard of them?
No.
No, they were quite famous, and yeah, they were groupies in the States, and they used to make a plastic cast of the singers, whatever, as a permanent reminder. Anyway, I'd better get on to Nat King Cole.
We digress.
Yeah, certainly Nat King Cole, because I've got a milestone to mark. But before we do that, I thought I might show this if I can. I'll bring it up to the camera and see if I can line it up with the camera. There we go. And I'm not quite sure whether you can see it. Which one are you? You're the dude in the driver's seat, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Oh.
And the guy by the
yeah.
door, you blondie, is Ian, who wrote the song.
Oh, okay.
And my brother's at the back of the car.
Right.
He's a backseat driver.
Yeah. So there we go.
And Brian Stewart on the roof.
Oh, all right. And the drum set on the bonnet. You wouldn't be able to do that now. Right. Okay. Let's get a little bit more civilised before Michael Wilson rings me up. On this day in 1965, the American singer and pianist Nat King Cole died aged 65 of lung cancer. He was the father of singer Natalie Cole, who has also passed away. In 1956, he became the first black American to host a television variety show, and that caused all sorts of problems over in the US. So I thought we'd play a Nat King Cole song just before we get back to other singers, because Nat King Cole had a magnificent voice.
Rambling road, why you ramble, no one knows. While and wind blown, that's how you've grown. Who ramble on, ramble on. When you're rambling, days are gone. Who will love you with a love true? When you're rambling, days are gone. Rambling rose, rambling rose. Why I want you, heaven knows. Though I love you with a love true, who can cling to a rambling rose? One more time, everybody now. Rambling rose, rambling rose. Why I want you, heaven knows. Though I love you with a love true, who can cling to a rambling rose?
That's a great voice of Nat King Cole and Ramblin' Rose. Max, if I can just draw you
Yes.
away from the CDs. What radio station do you used to pick up in Turakina?
We used to listen to Australian radio stations before the New Zealand ones started. So we listened to 2UE, 2UW,
Oh, yeah.
and stations like that. And we were able to pick up songs before they were released in New Zealand, so that when they came out, we were ready to roll with those. But the local radio station was 2XA, and they were really good to us. They had big studios, and we could go in there and do broadcasts and so on. And
Yeah.
a lot of bands made use of that. So it was probably you stuck with the local station.
Yeah. Now, the reason I asked that was Ramblin' Rose. Those stations, or that station you listened to, they would have had the old Sunday requests.
Yes.
Yeah. I know I listened, well, had to listen because my parents had it on 1ZB in Auckland on a Sunday with the requests, and there were always requests for Ramblin' Rose.
Yes.
Always requests for Jim Reeves and I Love You Because and it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned about the Aussie stations, because people might find it hard to believe, but in those days the local stations went off air, didn't they?
Yeah.
During the night.
Yep.
And as I said, pre-Radio Hauraki days, we could also in Auckland pick up the Sydney stations, 2UE and that. And I was just thinking, I don't know what I mentioned it because I've mentioned it probably 1,000 times before, but Wild Thing, I always remember going to school on the school bus, and there was a guy from Whenuapai Air Force base called Rodney Swift. And I got on the bus, and he got up and said, I heard this tremendous song last night on 2UE, and it was called Wild Thing, and he tried to perform it, which was quite interesting, but nothing like the record. But yeah, I don't know what it is with the Aussie stations. When I was in the bank and managed the branch down in Greymouth, I didn't have an aerial on the radio on the stereo, and I couldn't really pick up the the local station,
Yeah.
but I could pick up the Sydney stations as clear as a bell. So
I think they were a lot more powerful.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it was, but
There was quite a time lag between them getting a song and us getting it, or a song being released.
Yeah.
And it was probably about the time of the Beatles that there was so much pressure, I think, from our youth that we managed to get recordings a bit sooner.
yeah, and I think the big change came when Radio Hauraki went out into the Hauraki Golf in Auckland, and I do know, and I've told this story 1,000 times before, so my one listener will probably tune out. But we lived on a farm, and next door there was a guy who was a steward for Air New Zealand, and he went to the States because Air New Zealand started flying to the States, and he came back and he had 3 records, and 2 of them I can remember. One is 45 of the Monkees and I'm a Believer, and the other one was the Royal Guardsmen and Snoopy versus the Red Baron, and he actually took I'm a Believer to the radio station, Radio Hauraki, and they were playing it well before it was actually released. But yeah, interesting. Anyway, it's 29 minutes to 9 o'clock. You're tuned to Arrow FM and listening to the 60s Nostalgia Show, which is kindly sponsored by Cotter and Stevens, the electrical contractors down in Jellicoe Street in Martinborough. Electrical contractors for private and also commercial, and experts around the dairy shed and anything you want to do about milk plant. Jim and Steve know all about it. They're the dealer of our agents for the Wairarapa, and they're also pretty expert on cooling and also the old effluent pond. And Jim, I hope you're listening it tonight. You're an old muso as well, and you've got the same colour here as what Max and I have got. Right, next up we have got, if I remember rightly, Bruce Chanel.
Make her mine, all mine. Hey, hey, baby, I wanna know if you'll be my girl. When you turned and walked away, that's when I wanna say, come on, baby, give me your word. I wanna know if you'll be my girl.
Right there, Bruce Chanel and Hey Baby, song also recorded by the La-Di-Dahs. Right, next up we've got a track. This is one I've selected and Max hasn't. It's from Larry's Rebels, from their debut album called A Study in Black, and it's a great version of Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Larry's Rebels here, and Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? And you like Larry's Rebels or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're a great New Zealand band.
Yeah, they were. We actually had a lot of bands, really good bands, didn't we?
I
Not to
think
say
so.
that your one wasn't good, but ones that did really well. You know, the La-Di-Das, the Avengers, the Formula. So yeah, so
There's some great musicians. The some of the impetus for us playing were our parents. My dad and mum both played the piano, and
oh yeah,
Dad played by ear, and Mum played from music. She was one step away from being fully trained musician, whatever that is, having a letters.
Yeah.
But Dad played by ear, and he was a lot older than most parents of our generation, and he used to play the piano for the silent movies in Turikina. When the
Is that
movies came
right?
round into the hall, because he could play what he liked. He loved it.
Oh goodness, yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, the old movies in the hall, because those little towns didn't have picture theatres.
No.
I was the same. I mean, Kumeu, which was just not very far out of Auckland, you went to the movies, you went to the hall.
Yeah.
The big thrill for us was when we went and stayed with my mother's parents down in Turkey, because they had a proper picture theatre.
Ooh.
Yeah. You roll the
Girls with ice cream trays.
yeah, you roll the Jaffers down the floor and do all the other bits and pieces. Right, 20 minutes to 9 o'clock. What have I got lined up next, Max?
Hey Mr. Tambourine Man, wasn't it, from the Byrds?
Yeah, well, you can announce it.
Yeah. No, the Byrds were a very influential group. In fact, we were compared to them in some ways, but they influenced a lot of the songs that we enjoyed and wanted to play.
Yeah.
They were a really great group.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I really liked the Byrds and a lot of their albums. So what I might do, Mr. Tambourine Man, of course, their first hit. So we might follow that one up from their country rock era, sort of right late in the 1960s, and get them to play a Bob Dylan song, because they played a lot of Dylan songs, didn't they? Yeah. So here's the Byrds and Mr. Tambourine Man.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there ain't no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. Take me for a trip upon your magic swirling ship. All my senses have been stripped, and my hands can't feel to grip, and my toes too numb to step. Wait only for my boot heels to be wandering. I'm ready to go anywhere. I'm ready for to fade onto my own parade. Cast your dancing spell my way. I promise to go under it. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there ain't no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you.
All right, next up, we've actually going to play two songs from the Byrds because they happened to be 2 tracks in a row. And the first one was a song featured in the movie Easy Rider, Wasn't Born to Follow, and then the Bob Dylan song You Ain't Going Nowhere.
So I'd rather go and journey where the diamond crescent's glowing and run across the valley beneath the sacred mountain and wander through the forest where the trees have leaves of prisms and break the light in colors that no one knows the names of. And when it's time I'll go and wait beside a legendary fountain till I see your form reflected in its clear and jeweled waters. And if you think I'm ready, you may lead me to the chasm where the rivers of our vision flow into one another. I will want to dive beneath the white cascading waters. She may beg, she may plead, she may argue with her logic and mention all the things I lose that really have no value. In the end she will surely know I wasn't born to follow.
The Byrds there, and I Wasn't Born to Follow. And next up we've got the Bob Dylan song You Ain't Going Nowhere, a song from the album Sweethearts of the Radio.
Clouds so swift, rain won't lift, gate won't close, railings froze. Get your mind off winter time, you ain't going nowhere. Ride me high, tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Oh, are we gonna fly down in the easy chair? I don't care how many letters they sent. The morning came, the morning went. Pack up your money, pick up your tent. You ain't going nowhere. Louis, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Oh no, are we gonna fly down in the easy chair? Buy me a flute and a gun that shoots, tailgates and substitutes. Strap yourself to a tree with roots. You ain't going nowhere. Louis, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Oh, are we gonna fly down in the easy chair? Now Genghis Khan, he could not keep all his kings supplied with sleep. We'll climb that hill, no matter how steep, when we get up to it. Louis, ride me high, tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Oh no, are we gonna fly down in the easy chair? Louis, ride me high, tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Help, I need somebody. Help, not just anybody. Help, you know I need someone. Help. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's
nobody's helping anyway. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I'll open up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? And now my life has changed in so many ways. My independence seems to vanish in the haze. But every now and then I feel so insecure. I know that I just need you like I never done before. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I'll open up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me, help me, help me. Ooh.
Help.
Yeah, you might need a bit of help. That was, of course, the Beatles, and Max wanted me to play that because he had some sort of story about movies or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, a little bit of nostalgia carrying on from what I was saying about my dad playing for the silent movies. Is that one of the perks that we had was being able to play in front of the screen when these movies came to Wanganui. So Help and Ferry Cross the Mersey, we got the job of the front band, and I remember we were still in our early days then, and we had very basic gear, including a couple of amplifiers that were homemade, built in Wanganui for us. And at one stage we were playing and the audience started laughing, and we turned around and the amplifier was smoking like mad. So we just slipped the plug out of that one and into another amp and carried on playing. But those sorts of things are not supposed to happen.
No. So, what, just little performances before the movies?
Yes, and we'd play tracks from the movie, and it was a great experience because it was quite a frightening audience. You couldn't see them.
Oh, yeah, true. yeah. So, they scream, the audience, just like they used to scream for the Beatles?
Yeah, at some stage, not always while we were playing.
Oh, okay. Righto. So, it's just clicked over 8 minutes to 9 o'clock, isn't it? So, coming to the end of the show, but Max has asked for the Spencer Davis Group and Keep On Running. I'm just going to tell him a story about Spencer Davis.
Keep on running, keep on hiding. One fine day I'm gonna be the one to make you understand. Oh yeah, I'm gonna
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be your man. Hey, come on. Make me feel so good. I wanna be your man. All right. Come on, baby. I wanna be your man. You know you make me feel so good. You know you make me wanna shine, baby. Come on. Oh, come on.
6 minutes to 9 o'clock. Time for one more, and we're going to have another track from the Beatles.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. You think you've lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. It's you she's thinking of, and she told me what to say. She said she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad. She said you hurt her so, she almost lost her mind. But now she says she knows you're not the hurting kind. She said she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. You know it's up to you. I think it's only fair. Pride can hurt you too. Apologize to her, because she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. She loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
The Beatles there, bringing to a close another edition of the 60s Nostalgia Show. And thanks very much for your company tonight. Max, it's been really good.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing the limelight.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. So you have to do it again because you've got plenty of time on your hands these days. So you're always welcome to come over and have a look at the great music from the 60s. The 60s Nostalgia Show's kindly sponsored by Cotter and Stevens, the electrical contractors down in Jellicoe Street in Martinborough, and was first broadcast all over the wonderful Wairarapa on Arrow FM 92.7.